artificial intelligence will completely transform our world. But what is AI? Why will it affect you? And how can you and your business survive and thrive through the AI revolution? Welcome to AI and You. Here is your host, author, speaker, and futurist, Peter Scott.
Hello, this is episode 231. Today, I do not have one guest, I have four. We're visiting AI in education again, and we're turning the conversation around. Instead of talking with an expert about AI, I'm talking with four educators who are on the front lines and can speak from current experience of what's going on. So here are the four people from California and Texas who have given us their time today to help sort this thing out. Jose Luis Navarro IV is the leading coach and consultant at the Navarro Group. He previously served as a support coordinator, leading innovative reforms in the Los Angeles Unified School District. Zack Kleypas is superintendent of schools in Thorndale, Texas, and named 2023 Texas Secondary Principal of the Year by the Texas Association of Secondary School Principals. Jeff Austin is a former high school teacher and principal who now works as a coach for Teacher-Powered Schools and Los Angeles Education Partnership. And Jose Gonzalez is Chief Technology Officer for the Los Angeles County Office of Education and former Vice Mayor of the city of Cudahy near Los Angeles. This panel went in some really interesting and unexpected directions for me, so let's get to it. Welcome to this very special episode, and we are talking here with a group of educators to try and get a handle on how AI is landing in education at the ground level. And I will let each of my guests introduce themselves, and then we'll get into it. So in order across my screen, Jeff Austin.
Hey, how's it going? Jeff Austin, I'm a former social studies high school teacher and principal, and I'm currently a community schools coach for Los Angeles Education Partnership and lead of coaching and support for Teacher-Powered Schools.
Thanks. Terrific. Zack.
Hey, everybody. Zack Kleypas, former high school math teacher, middle school principal, high school principal, now superintendent in Thorndale, Texas.
Fantastic. Jose Navarro.
Hi, Jose Luis Navarro. I'm the lead coach for the 21 CSLA grant through Los Angeles Educational Partnership. I was a principal, California Teacher of the Year, and a social studies teacher. Nice to be here.
Terrific. And Jose Gonzalez.
Hey, everybody. Jose Gonzalez, currently Chief Technology Officer at Los Angeles County Office of Education.
All right. So let's get into this. We just a couple of episodes ago had Sir Anthony Selden from the UK's AI in Education initiative on, and I asked him to tell the audience how he felt the size of this impact of AI in education could be usefully described in a way that people could take on board. And he likened it to the invention of the printing press, which is pretty significant, like once in a millennium sort of event. Can you tell us, how has this landed for you? It's less than 2 years since ChatGPT came out. That's a little hard to think now, given how much water has flowed under the bridge. But how has it landed for you personally? How did it show up? Who wants to start with that?
I can kick off by saying, I think to truly understand the impact of AI, it's kind of difficult because it's very pervasive, but it's one of those topics that some people love and some people don't. And so some of the use of AI and ChatGPT, for example, are done kind of under the cover of darkness, right? You think of students maybe using AI to help write a paper or to generate thoughts to start a rough draft, or even maybe beyond what they could come up with themselves. And so I think it's all around us, and our kids are very, very aware of it. I just wonder how much we understand that they're using it and how often they're using it. That would be a big question.
Right. Well, and Zack, for you personally, then, how did it first show up in a big way?
Yeah, I've seen it, English class is a common example where students have to generate, create, come up with original style papers. And unfortunately, AI sometimes gets paired with plagiarism. If you take the negative side of AI, right, there's so many positives, but we've seen it in sort of a worry or a fear that students might use AI to write a paper beyond what they really have the skill to do. And then teachers not knowing if this is authentic work, if it's supported work, or somewhere in between. And so it's really left more questions, I think, for our teachers as they grade and as they try to understand the skill set of their students.
Sure. I remember I was in Los Angeles at the time, actually, in a hotel room, turned on the TV for something to do, and there was a South Park episode, and this was like only a few months after ChatGPT came out, and that was the episode where they were doing about ChatGPT, and obviously that had a very education, school-centered focus there and tapping into something. Jeff, how did that land for you? Not necessarily the South Park episode, but your first exposure to ChatGPT. How did you find out about it?
Obviously, I mean, it came up in the news and you hear a lot about AI. And so I don't necessarily follow tech news that closely, but definitely that first introduction, I think within a week, we had the first instance of just like what Zack was saying, and the student deciding to create their essay based on, try to use this ChatGPT and forgetting that the teacher knew their style already. And so that was really like the first intro, was students, like they do with everything, trying to feel out the boundaries and test the market and see what happened. But I mean, it quickly for me, like it just kind of turned into, at least amongst the teachers that I worked with, both at the school and the people that I talked to in my networks around the country, is how can we use this as a tool to kind of take away or take some things, not off your plate, but just there's stuff that you can have a computer do, like, hey, let's ask the AI bot to design something for you. And so you have a skeleton to work with. And so, I mean, that's really how it entered. And I think that's when I hear the fears around AI, it really is that whole thing is, oh, they're just going to all start cheating. And I haven't heard it playing out quite that way. And I think about, Jose knows him, but I think about a teacher he had, Rob Martinez, and he used to do this huge essay with his seniors. And when he got to the end where they turned in their final, usually like a 20-page essay, I always asked him, how do you grade 120-page essays in 3 days? And he's like, I've been grading it all semester. And so I think that's people like him and people that are a little more innovative who recognize that this is just another tool. They were already working around it. So for teachers like him and others that this isn't a threat, it becomes an opportunity.
Thank you. How many teachers found out about these tools from their students?
I'd say most.
Jose?
No, I was going to say that it first came on the scene. I was working with this assistant principal. We needed to come up this 2 years ago. We needed to work on a field trip policy. I'll leave the school out of it. I'll leave the assistant principals. He showed me ChatGPT and he goes, should we try this? I go, let's put it in there. Field trip policy for Los Angeles Unified School District. And it just gave us everything. Notify parents, escape routes, everything within seconds. We could have wrote it. Now we had a base. We just plugged in the pronouns and we were done. That was one hand. The other side of it is my son is taking, last year he took AP Euro, and he was very frustrated because I wouldn't buy this ChatGPT or this AI app for him. And all of his friends were using it. They had A's in the class. He had a C. On the end, he passed the AP test. He was one of two people that passed the AP test with a 3. Everybody else failed. In the end, I said, it doesn't matter what your grade is. What do you know? Nobody's ever going to ask you. And then the teacher had a policy. If you passed it, you got moved up to an A. My point is, he was very frustrated because kids were just cheating and the teacher was really kind of unaware of it. He started threatening them, saying he had an AI detector, which was kind of funny because he never really used it. He didn't really care. He knew it all come out in the wash, which leads me to what Jeff was saying. It is just a tool. It is just a tool. I'm noticing that students, in order to use it, you have to know how to write the right questions. The way it's adjusting education, and my wife's an intervention specialist, is that teachers they're going to have to stop. Many already have been on this, like Robert Martinez, like Jeff mentioned. You have to stop assigning things that are easy to grade and start assessing the things that are at the heart of what you want to teach. If it's just easy to grade, you drop in ChatGPT, it's done for you. Another shift is all the homework is being done in class. because teachers know kids can cheat. The lectures, you flip the classroom and the lectures and all that, the readings. Well, if you want to put that in ChatGPT and get some notes for it, that's fine. You still got to read the notes. So it's really, the good teachers are already ahead of it. Some of the other teachers are going to be fearful of it, but they were fearful of everything. People that are scared. I think people that are see it as just another tool, it is what it is. It is just another tool. Right now, my son is a little frustrated because many of his friends are cheating on the U.S. AP test or essays they have to write at home. But then the teacher says, well, how does this compare to this? How are you going to talk about the Declaration of Independence and Franklin Roosevelt's For Freedom speech? You could put it in ChatGPT, but really brings out your own voice. So the teacher is really trying to get at the heart of what he wants the kids to know instead of just what's easy to grade. And that's really a fundamental shift. There's also the social justice aspect of it. And well, I guess we'll get to that.
Well, and you brought up some very good points there to raise. And I'm really picking up on how this varies considerably across markets. I mean, I heard from a teacher 2 days ago who is doing further education, who is in deep despair because in her particular instance, there is rampant cheating and they don't care even about being caught. And then there was an article in Time magazine a few days ago from a professor who said, I quit because of how much cheating was going on and use of ChatGPT. So it's certainly landing differently in different places. Jose Gonzalez, what's your experience been?
Well, I think there was a lot of fear around cheating. And I think for me, it just blew my mind when I first saw it. I mean, we were asking it to design on the business side a project charter for various implementations with a timeline. And it was giving us stuff that normally would take us, 10 hours of work. It was knocking it out in, just a matter of minutes. And obviously we had to put a little bit of the work there ourselves, review everything, double check it. I think most AI bots now, or chat bots or generative AI systems say, please double check everything and make sure, the AI is not hallucinating. But I think the impact is tremendous in education because not only can it make our operational work efficient, I think it also does help our teachers and students as well. And I think as districts, we have an obligation to ensure that students know how to use this tool. There was a survey done by LinkedIn that was shared with us at the Microsoft HQ in Silicon Valley that basically stated that 80% of the workforce was using AI. This was as of 3 or 4 months ago. And so if our students are not prepared to use AI, they're going to be in a huge deficit in the workforce. And so I think looking at that Stanford study, it shows that really it's about teaching students how to be responsible, just like everything else that they've had in the past, right? It's about digital citizenship. It's about not bullying online, right? These are things that we should be teaching kids not to do and how to be digital citizens in essence. The last thing I'll say that about AI that was a huge statistic for me and is one of the things we're working at LACO. We actually just finalized our AI guidelines where we brought about 40 to 50 folks together, including students, parents, nonprofit members, principals, teachers, and administrators and superintendents from across the county to come up with overall guidelines on the overall ethics of AI, the benefits and risks, how to select the proper vendor. There's a lot of folks out there saying they have AI when they don't. Pilot testing, and really making sure that there's some sort of blueprint that educators can use to implement. And the statistic I wanted to bring up is that I just mentioned 80% of the corporate workforce, or at least the folks on LinkedIn said they were using AI. We did a study as part of the AI guidelines and the AI task force, and it found that 20% of teachers knew what AI was and thought they could use it. And it was about 30% of administrators that felt that they knew what AI was and thought they could use it. So you could see that huge disparity already of how we're not doing a great job of training our K-12 or education team members and workforce on how to leverage AI. It is said that, at least as of 3 or 4 months ago, if someone leverages AI properly, this is a conversation also at Microsoft, that it can save them 50 to 60% of their time that could be properly invested somewhere else. Imagine a counselor being able to do their master scheduling in the set of a few minutes and then double checking it. And then now they can focus on the students directly and maybe even create personalized learning plans for each student, right? So there's a lot of benefits, I think, and we have to look at it on the business side, right? How it supports the staff themselves, and then also on the education side and supporting the classroom and students directly.
Wow, I've got so many notes here to go through. I like you brought up the online safety aspect of this. I feel a lot more comfortable with AI than social media. I'd much rather my children were talking to ChatGPT than some random person on Snapchat. It's a lot more polite. And you brought up the question of, I'll paraphrase it, ethics and governance frameworks, which is coming up in a lot of quarters, because this is very much a Wild West kind of situation. This has just been put out there. There's no regulation. There are no guidelines. There are few guidelines with respect to the use of AI in education, like from UNESCO and so forth. But I hear from a lot of quarters that teachers feel they need to know where the guardrails are. They need the instructions to make sure they don't make some mistake, that this is used properly. Jeff, do you want to address how that might be something that needs to be developed?
I mean, yeah, I think the only thing I sort of hesitate around with developing those, and I thinking about the process that Jose was talking about bringing in lots and lots of voices, bringing in families and students and teachers. My only hesitation around guidelines is who's creating them. And you think about, there's the story that's out right now of the young man that died by suicide after what they decided was his chat bot friend, his digital friend encouraging him. And then you see some of the transcript and it's a loose cut. And they're being very critical of the people who created this AI program, that they didn't put enough guardrails in. And it's like, we are definitely treading in space that it's still very much a pathfinding experience. And so I think when you can bring in more voices of different groups of people who are using the tool and experiencing it and see how it's playing out in the, I'd say, real world, because it's just also playing out in a fake world. That's where I would want it to go. And I think that it's fair for teachers to ask those questions. And I think if they're in a space like, it was always how I worked, and it was definitely how Jose worked when we were together at the school, is if you're developing the relationships with your students and families, you all can explore that space together and have the conversations that when people get a little worried about what might happen, that it's not like the students or their families are kind of hiding what the experiment is, or hiding, and worried that there's going to be some judgment in that space. Because we were teaching when the internet started coming around as well. I mean, the internet started when I was in college, but then Googling questions, like your essay prompts, was a thing when I was early on teaching, and it just freaked people out. And it became I suspect all of my students are just going to Google all their responses, but it was, I think, just in this same situation for developing the guidelines, it's having those conversations with students. And then, like Zack referred to earlier, it's, if you are familiar with your student, you're familiar with how they work and how they think, this is just less of a concern. And I think we can build those guidelines that are supportive of teachers, but also says to families, we're working with this and we need your support. And says to students, hey, why don't you all be part of the solution as well? Because I don't think you all want to kind of live in a world where they're living in a world where the stories, like you said, social media, the stories are being made up about them. And so I think they want to be in on the conversation as well. I know my daughter's in 7th grade and she asks me all the time about rules and how do we make them and how can she be part of making the rules. And I think that's, for me, where the guidelines should come from, is just a lot of voices.
And you're describing an environment there that's very much based on mutual trust. And it works, I think, very well there. And then there are other environments and in some schools where it's more of an adversarial relationship. And it's, I think, going to be a lot harder for them. What sort of concerns or feedback are you hearing from parents and families? Zack?
That's not AI. That's not AI's problem, right? I mean, the adversarial relationship.
Yes,
so
there is that.
I hear you. I hear you.
But Zack or Jose Navarro, what sort of conversations have you had or heard of with families and parents?
I was just thinking about the professor you brought up. I wonder if they're quitting because they don't want to change or because they're actually scared of AI. In my experience, people don't want to change, and you're going to have to change. And this is moving so quickly. Like Jeff said a few years ago was Google. Oh my God, they're going to Google. Well, now my son wanted to, again, my son and my daughter, my son wants to run the LA Marathon. And he said, what do I have to do? He put this in ChatGPT. What do I have to do? What kind of workout should I do if I want to run it in the end of March? He had to figure out, how do you write the question? If you can figure out how to write a question, so the teachers need, instead of the answer, how do you write a question to find out what you want? And so again, are people quitting because they're fundamentally, they don't want to change, or because they're scared of ChatGPT? I think what I'm hearing from parents they're generally lost. Right now, myself, I'm a parent, I'm also in education, so I'm surrounded by this. I'm still generally lost about it. It's moving way too fast. I have my daughter comparing herself to the top 1% of people's lives that she sees on social media. The other 99% of their life may suck. She's comparing it to that 1%. And now you have ChatGPT. So ultimately, it goes down to critical thinking. I had a former, I'll say it. I had a former California Teacher of the Year. She was a Teacher of the Year before me. And she posted something on social media. She's very conservative, her politics. And she says, like, Biden, get it right. And I showed Biden with the boot. I'm sure you saw this, Jeff. The boot on his left foot, and split screen, the boot was on his right foot. And it was clearly generated by Photoshop. And I wrote her, I said, like, I just need you to critically think about this. Like, look at that. It's a different dog. I mean, look at the background. It's so clearly generated. She goes, how would you know? I said, because I asked the question. Google it. You can literally drop the image into ChatGPT and it'll tell you. But you have to want. Confirmation bias is probably what I'm more scared of. Racism is, I'm more scared of those things. And when the ChatGPT and all the AI are made, they're going to mirror the people that make them. They are disproportionately recognizing African Americans when it comes to facial recognition, leading to a lot of wrongful arrests. And that's a fact. This is from a study that was written in December 2020 or January 2024.
Right.
We are disproportionately recognized or disproportionately disqualifying Latinos and Blacks when it comes to mortgage loans because they represent the people that write the programs.
Right.
And so they have their bias, their confirmation bias. Oh, see? And so AI, I think what Jeff was talking about is when you bring the people in, we need to ask them those things. We can put in ChatGPT, what should our ethics policy be? And it'll give us an ethics policy for AI. It'll give us one in a few seconds, or we can write it ourselves and be critical about it. I'm not scared of it because it's going to help me, kind of what Jose Gonzalez was saying, get to the work. It'll help me do my job so I can get to the work. The job is what's in my contract. The work is what I know needs to get done.
And you talk about confirmation bias there, and that brings up a question I want to address to Zack here, which is you have all talked about using this in your work to generate things that have saved you a lot of time, and the importance of applying critical thinking to the results because it can, as you say, hallucinate. But the characteristic of AI, of these large language models, is that its answers will always be confident. They'll always be phrased in a way that it sounds like the voice of an expert giving a confident answer, even when they're wrong. And we've all experienced that as well. Now, when we apply our principles of critical thinking and how to verify sources and so forth to that, we can filter out hallucinations and end up with results that are better than we could have done ourselves in the same time. So we know we're ahead. But is there a concern that children who haven't developed those critical thinking skills yet will look at this as the voice of an expert and just accept it without doing that? Zack, what do you...
Just really quick, I just wanted to say I've had that happen with human beings, by the way.
Oh, yes.
Confidently, like they know what they're talking about.
Is it, to what extent are we concerned about that with AI? Zack, what's your take?
Yeah, I think in education, if you're using AI to improve versus using AI instead of, you'll be in good shape. And what I mean by that is if you just don't want to do something and you're using AI because you don't want to do it, there's a lot of problems that can come with that. If you're using AI as a tool to improve a piece of work or do better, you'll be in good shape. A good example that we've got to experience and watch progress, which we haven't had the time to do with AI, I think is the tool of the calculator. And when the calculator came out, we were very scared of the calculator. Kids aren't going to know how to add and subtract anymore. This is going to ruin all of math. Hide your calculators. Don't give kids calculators. And eventually we figured out this is a tool, right? And so at the younger grades, sure, you might want to do a addition, multiplication, subtraction, division chart with no calculator on your desk so that you can learn that simple math. But there's not many of us today who don't pull out our phone and add a couple digits together on the calculator just to be sure. But a lot like AI, the calculator is only as good as the input. So when you talk about this confident expert, well, is anybody better at math than a calculator? No. But if you mistype or you misunderstand the question and you type in wrong numbers, you're going to get the wrong answer. And so the critical thinking for our kids, the ability to be able to know the process, to be able to check their work is incredibly important when doing math problems on the calculator. And it's the exact same for using AI. If you write a paper using AI about something you have no idea about, you are leaving yourself very vulnerable to some very strange opinions, facts, and even resources quoted. Sometimes there's been studies of things being quoted that aren't actual documents. They were just kind of made up and fabricated. And so for our kids to be good at the calculator, they need the skills that the calculator has, and then the calculator improves that skill. It's not instead of knowing that skill. If our kids are going to get good at AI, they're going to learn the skills that they're asking AI to do, and it's going to improve their work. It's not going to be instead of learning how to write a paper, for example.
Thank you. Well, then that suggests to me the question of how do we differentiate the way in which we teach or encourage the use of AI across different grades, like middle school versus high school? What's the difference?
Yeah, if I can stay with it for one more second, I think we have to give ourselves some grace. Our teachers are very busy and they are trying to master the craft with the information they've got right now. And so when you throw AI onto it, where many in education, I shouldn't say no one, many people don't fully understand, you're asking them to create an environment that they're not familiar with. And so there's been examples given of people being scared that they were just going to Google exam questions. Well, so what do you do for that? You don't allow them access to Google during a test. You don't do the take-home test. Or perhaps you ask higher level questions that don't have a singular Google answer. We're going to have to do the same thing with AI. And in a lot of classrooms, we're not quite ready for that. And that's okay. But we need to start figuring that out, because just like the calculator didn't go away, AI is not going away. And they're both great tools that we've got to evolve so that we can help our kids use them appropriately.
And these tech changes are going to come even quicker, Zach. To meet your point, I mean, with calculator, how much time do we have till we had Google? Now we have AI. What's going to come next? And I think one of the major secrets, and I heard this from a parent during the pandemic, who said she was at her wit's end, and she said, and it was actually a friend of mine, she said, I did not subscribe to the social contract where I had to spend this much time with my kid. My kids drive me crazy. And I kind of laughed and I was like, oh my God, at least you're being honest with me. We have to talk to our kids. So I ask my son every day and I ask my daughter every day, what is going on? What did you read in social media? So we can actually and I could teach them how to critically think through conversation. But so many of us are working, we don't have time, or our kids are going through teenage-itis and they're a pain in the ass to talk to. I don't want to talk to you. But the point is, we have to talk to our kids. We have to ask them. And our teachers need to do the same thing. We can't depend on all the teachers to do all the work. And we can't depend on, as a community, we need to surround our kids with critical thinking. So why do you think that? Where did that come from? Source it. And I got called this past Sunday, wrong number. It said, Jack, can you bring a bottle of wine to my room? I'm in the Ritz-Carlton. And then I started responding, I'm sorry, wrong number. And they had this whole conversation with me. And my son goes, I think that's an AI bot. They're trying to find out where you live. And eventually he said, well, where do you live? I was like, oh my gosh. So I said, are you an AI bot? And it started freaking out. My son was able to recognize it before I was. I was like, well, this is really an in-depth conversation for a wrong number. But I totally agree with what you're saying, Zach. Our teachers, our parents, everybody needs to start teaching our kids more about critical thinking. It's going to fundamentally shift the way we teach. And those, back to your point, Peter, is those who don't want to change will just quit. And I don't want them to quit. I want to prepare them, because I don't think we have a teacher shortage in California or in Texas or in the world. We have a shortage of people willing to do this job. So if they're willing to do this job, then let's prepare them to do it. Let's prepare them to teach our kids how to critically think, not just answer. My son is I think it's interesting, Jose Gonzalez, what you put in the chat about Chat GPT or AI did not increase cheating. It didn't. It just shifted. These kids that were cheating anyways. But they just got a little more sophisticated and the teachers need to keep up. So instead of asking them the answer, ask them to write the question. And the kids were freaking out. The answer is easy to get, but do you know how to ask the right questions now? It is fundamentally shifting, and I think we need to do this together.
I like that shift there of going from the answer to the question. That's one of my themes. And I talk to so many teachers who are afraid that this means a loss of their job or an unpleasant shift in their job, and that haven't had time to process this or talk to the right people or dissect what's accurate and what's hype in the media.
It's happening so fast, Peter. It's happening so fast that people can't keep up with it.
That's the end of the first half of the panel. Next half next week. For the usual reasons, but also because there's a lot to unpack there, and it's important to take a break and unpack some of it. One thing that's coming across loud and clear is how varied the responses are to AI in schools right now. You heard that in some places, with some educators, it's being appropriately leveraged, and the need to keep kids safe and engaged is being addressed. And in others, there's more chaos, and the teachers, kids, and parents are in conflict and disarray. This is something we need to get right now. It's not a theoretical or future thing. It's a real issue in schools right now. This is where the impact of AI is immediate and vital. Students in the 12th grade, for instance, are going to graduate into a world changed by AI in 8 months. And what are we doing to prepare them for that? Are we still preparing them for yesterday's world? In today's news ripped from the headlines about AI, a new paper in Computers and Human Behavior, Artificial Humans, that's the title of the periodical. The title of the paper is The Efficiency Accountability Trade-off in AI Integration, Effects on Human Performance and Over-Reliance. It explains how the design of AI assistants impacts human reliance, performance, and critical thinking. To quote from the paper, our findings indicate that while users favor efficient, actionable outputs from AI systems, this preference can lead to increased reliance and potential over-reliance, particularly when the AI's performance degrades. The preference for direct answers aligns with the practical emphasis on efficiency in AI use, but it also poses risks associated with automation complacency. End quote. The researchers found that when explanations were provided alongside direct answers, there was no change in users' behavior, and concluded that users may value explanations theoretically, but prefer quick solutions in practice. I think there's a lot more research that needs to be done in this area, and it's really important. It's hard to research, and it's hard to understand the results of that research, but my own experience of LLMs is that there are places where their output is wrong, hallucinations if you want to use the common term, but it's very non-obvious that that's happened. And I worry what's happening in a world where too many people accept the output non-critically. It'll take time to understand this properly. Next week, we'll conclude the panel when we'll talk about whether students need to read as much as they used to now they have AI, fact-checking, some disturbing stories about the use of AI detectors in schools, where the panel sees these trends evolving to, what they're doing to help students learn better in an AI world, and Iron Man. That's next week on AI and You. Until then, remember, no matter how much computers learn how to do, it's how we come together as humans that matters.
That's all for this episode of AI and You. Please leave a rating and comment and share with your friends. Get the book Artificial Intelligence and You and see more videos and articles at aiandyou.net. That's aiandyou.net, where you can also send us your questions. Thank you for listening.